Good evening. Martin Luther, leader of the church reform movement in the Holy Roman Empire, has disappeared. He was on trial in Worms for heresy. His attempt to reform the church began 4 years ago in the town of Wittenberg, when Luther, then a little-known university professor, posted 95 religious propositions on the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church. That spark kindled this latest reform movement. Marco of Padua in Worms, Germany, has this report.
Here in the Imperial Diet Hall, Martin Luther, little more than a common churchman, faces some of the most powerful men in the German Empire. Princes, cardinals, even the Emperor, Charles V. Hundreds of Luther's followers have gathered here today to lend their silent support.
Brother Martin, are you now prepared to grant that God has given the Pope supreme power and divine knowledge to govern the spiritual life of man?
I am not now prepared to grant any such thing, for God has not. The Church alone has given him that power.
Brother Martin, you are skirting dangerously close to outright heresy. I implore you recant or face excommunication.
I cannot, sir. My conscience is captive to God. Here I stand. I can do no other. I ask you, Bishop, is it right to act against one's conscience?
Conscience, Brother Martin. If you are not a heretic, the Pope is your conscience. Through his voice alone, God directs people to heaven.
I respectfully disagree. The Pope sells worthless boards as pieces of the true cross. His words imply that money can end suffering in purgatory. No, Your Excellency. I prefer to listen only to God's voice. It speaks directly to the people through the Bible. Salvation is through faith in the mercy of God. Only in this way can any of us be saved, including you, Emperor Charles, and even Pope Leo himself.
Luther, the product of a very strict upbringing, has long condemned the worldly aspects of the church, as have other reformers before him, such as Jan Hus and John Wycliffe. Johann von Staupitz, Luther's mentor at Wittenberg, has come here to lend his support to his former protege. Dr. von Staupitz, what can you tell us about Martin's spiritual development?
As a young man, he whipped himself raw, froze in his room during the winter, prayed on his knees until they were bloody, and fasted for days. If he had continued this regimen, he would almost certainly have tortured himself to death. It was only after he had abandoned these practices that he learned the true lesson of God.
And that is?
The just man lives by faith alone.
After being branded a heretic at the Diet of Worms, Martin Luther disappeared somewhere along this lonely road to Wittenberg. But alive or dead, his reform movement, or Reformation, has now captured the imagination of people all over Europe who despise spiritual abuses by a worldly church. And thanks to the printing press, which has allowed Luther's tracts to be disseminated throughout the empire, this latest reform movement may be difficult for the church to stop. Marco of Padua for EBC News.
In England, Queen Anne Boleyn gave birth this morning to a 6-pound, 2-ounce baby. The new arrival has been named Elizabeth. King Henry VIII is less than happy, however. The throne of England still has no male successor. For weeks now, the Chinese army of the Ming dynasty has been poised on its southern border, awaiting orders to invade the kingdom of Vietnam. But today, Vietnamese leader Can Tho offered ritual submission to the Chinese emperor in exchange for a neutrality pact. The Chinese say they will suspend plans for an invasion until Vietnam's civil war is over.
The Pope orders holy books put to the torch.
The musket. It's rewriting the rules of war. From Avelia's Armory.
EBC News has just learned that the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez has taken the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, and that the Aztec king, Montezuma, is dead. There are rumors that the Aztecs were dying rapidly from smallpox, a disease they apparently caught from Cortez's men. Italian explorer Christopher Columbus died of an infection complicated by arthritis last night at the age of 55. His successful voyage in 1492 opened up the West Indies to Spanish domination, but his subsequent voyages were less successful. The New World Columbus discovered is now being called America, after Admiral Amerigo Vespucci.